I feel honored to introduce to you all an esteemed speaker whom I'm sure all of
Doesn't that the problem with the snippets?
It is the next session is
Mute
starting.
only. It's already gone on live, so don't
Dr. Hashimanda, welcome to the group. We'll start in next 14 minutes.
Most well. No, please take your time. I'm with you as long as you need. Don't worry, please.
Thank you, sir.
Can you hear clearly, please?
Fantastic, sir. Very clear.
Okay, thank you. No worries. I'm around now.
Renu and Smita, could you guys speak and try out whether you're audible?
Yes, Ronald, am I audible?
Yeah, perfect. Renu, ask to unmute.
Today it is Saman na, who will do recap.
Yeah, so Renu is not issue, no?
She was in for a bit, but I think Saman.
Hello.
Perfect, perfect.
Hello.
Thank you.
Hello. My net, some issues are there. That's why I'm not able to hear also.
But Renu,
Yeah, yeah, Smita.
the 2 day recap is given by Saman, no?
Someone, yeah, yeah. She will be giving 2 days recap.
Yes.
Once this valedictory session.
Yes.
Thank you so much for this. It's a fantastic experience. And my question is for Mr. Nasani regarding the denotified tribes. We've heard about their atrocities
Someone, can you say hi? Ashmanda sir, we have not started the session. That's why, sir.
Sure, no worries at all. I was just getting anxious that I shouldn't be.
No, sir, we are okay. We are fine.
I'm around, no worries, please.
Someone, can you say hi to us?
Hello, hi everyone.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Audible? Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Hello, Biba.
Smita, we are good to go. You can start in 1 minute.
Okay, Ronald. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the valedictory session of the conference, day 2. I am feeling deeply honored to introduce to you all an eminent speaker whom I feel that you already know through his work. He is here today to deliver the valedictory address. Mr. Harsh Mandar, who is born in the year 1955, is an Indian author, columnist, researcher, teacher, and a social activist who works with the survivors of mass violence, hunger, as well as with the street children and urban people who are homeless. Mr. Mandar worked for 20 years with the Indian Administrative Service and he was posted in Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh. He has been a lifelong activist working towards securing to people the right to food, land, housing, and health. He is currently the director of Center for Equity Studies. It's a research organization based in Delhi focusing on socio-economic justice. Mr. Mandar is also currently acting as the Special Commissioner to the Supreme Court of India in the Right to Food case. He is a founder of several interesting and successful campaigns. To name a few, Aman Biradari for secularism, peace and justice, Nyay Garah for legal justice and reconciliation for survivors of communal violence, and Dilse for street children and Hosla for urban people who are homeless. He is a founding member of the National Campaign for People's Right to Information. He is advisory board chair of Human Rights Initiative. He was a member of the core groups on bonded labor and mental hospitals of the statutory National Human Rights Commission, and he is also on various official national committees. Mr. Mandar has received several awards in recognition of the work that he has done, outstanding work that he has done. Few of the awards are here. Rajiv Gandhi National Sadbhavna Award for Peace Work, the M.A. Thomas National Human Rights Award 2002, the South Asian Minority Lawyers Harmony Award in 2012, and the Chisti Harmony Award also in the same year 2012. We have a distinguished speaker amidst us, and I'm sure all of us are waiting to hear from him. But as is the custom, before we move on to the valedictory address by Mr. Harsh Mandar, I call upon my colleague, Dr. Saman Afroz, to give a recap of the 2 days conference that transpired, recap of that up till now. Over to you, Dr. Saman.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smita. A very good afternoon to each and everyone present here. I'm Dr. Saman Afroz, and I'm an assistant professor with the College of Social Work, Nirmala Niketan. It's a pleasure for me to present a recap of the 2 days proceedings of the conference. And I would like to thank the organizing committee for entrusting this important task to me. Hope I'm able to do justice. To summarize the immense knowledge imparted in the last 2 days in just 10 minutes is quite an uphill task. Still, I would like to put forth some of the main highlights. Request the speakers to forgive me in case I miss out on some important points shared by you. So the 2 days international conference on community-based peace building challenges and opportunities started yesterday, that is the 18th of December, sharp at 11 o'clock. And we were overwhelmed to have around 1,500 participants joining us through various platforms. The conference began with Dr. Anita Panot, the convener of the conference, welcoming the participants. She presented the broad theme and sub-themes of the conference as well. This was followed by the welcome address by our respected principal, Dr. Lidwin Dias. And welcoming the participants, Dr. Dias also highlighted the various work that college has been undertaking over the past several years in the area of peace building. And she also contextualized the theme of the conference in the present scenario. After this, all of us joined the keynote address, which was much awaited, and it was by Dr. Christophe Jaffrelet, who is a professor in King's College, London, and is a renowned scholar in the field of community peace. Professor Jaffrelet traced the trajectory of the riots in India, starting from the Gujarat riots in 2002, and he also and till the recent Delhi riot of 2020. According to him, while the Gujarat riots led to polarization and ghettoization, the Delhi riots introduced a new form of violence supported by the state machinery, which is very, very disturbing. Further, he explained the correlation between timing of elections and waves of riots in India. And towards the end of his address, he gave 3 concrete recommendations for peace building, which included lobbying for police reform, societal change, wherein everyone needs to challenge the anti-vigilance. So society has to come together and fight with the nuisance creating agencies in our society. And the last he suggested was reconciliation between the 2 communities who are involved in any form of violence. And in this regard, the NGOs can play a very, very important role. So what struck me most out of this keynote address was being a foreign national, Professor Jaffrelet was able to give us such deep and intricate nuances and insights from India and its politics of violence. So it was really, really, amazing to listen to him, and it was a very, very enriching keynote address, and it rightly set the tone for the future further proceedings of the conference. We then moved to the 2 parallel sessions. I feel that Dr. Renu has already given a very, very detailed review of those sessions. So I will not go into very much details of these sessions. So the first parallel session was chaired by Dr. Vaijanta Anand. And the lead speaker for this session was Professor Ranu Jain from the Center of Studies in Sociology of Education, Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Okay, and the paper presenters for this session included Dr. Archana Kaushik, Dr. Anita Panot, and Ms. Ariba Anwar. So Dr. Ranu Jain in her session introduced the concept of positive peace, and she explained it further by emphasizing on how positive peace was threatened in present crisis of COVID-19. She outlined the present crisis with the help of insightful examples from recent incidents like COVID-imposed lockdown, weakening of democratic institutions, and states' repression of dissenting voices. Dr. Ranu Jain concluded in her presentation with a remark that peace-building approach has to be holistic and dedicated towards bringing attitudinal change and enriching the commitment among the community members. The project-oriented approach that makes community dependent should be given away to inculcate more participative and self-reliant approach. So this was the major takeaway from Dr. Ranu's presentation. It was again very, very enriching. And this was followed by 3 paper presentations. The first one was by Dr. Archana Kaushik, who is an associate professor from Delhi School of Social Work, which happens to be my alma mater. And she spoke on converting corona crisis into opportunity for cordial living, a case of civil society intervention in India. So this paper was mostly based on the case study of a Dalit community of Musahars, who are also named as rat eaters from Varanasi. And it focused on the interventions taken by an NGO named PVCHR, which is People Vigilance Committee on Human Rights, to provide effective relief to these Musahir community post the COVID-19 pandemic. And after this, we had the second paper presentation by Dr. Anita Panot, and the topic of her presentation was engaging in community peace building process. Dr. Panot emphasized upon the nature of pandemic as a leveling experience for both developed and developing nations, and how the structure of society has been affected because of the same. And she also shared a few youth initiatives that made noteworthy contributions in peace building. We then moved to the second parallel session, and the lead speaker of this session was Dr. Fatima Sajjad, who's an assistant professor in Department of Political Science, University of Management and Technology, Lahore. And Dr. Fatima mainly focused on how post 9/11 counter-radicalization policies focused on the problems of madrasas and public schools and heightened the failure of these systems to promote critical thinking skills among students. She also analyzed the problem of the grade-oriented elite education through a case study of Cambridge O-level Pakistan. And she highlighted upon the challenges of peace building through education on the basis of one study that she undertook. This lead speakers session by Dr. Sajjad was followed by Ms. Meghna Westpicker's paper, which was on spirals of silence, a theoretical framework for understanding and handling conflicts. And after that, we had presentations by Dr. Neeraj Kerkita and Dr. Samar Iqbal. Since the recap of these sessions has already been done in the morning, I'll be straight away moving to the day 2 proceedings. And so day 2, we had the first parallel session, and this session was chaired by Professor Prabha Tirmare, my colleague from the college. And the lead speaker for this session was Advocate Irfan, engineer. And Dr. Irfan's presentation was followed by speakers, Ms. Ayman Siddiqui, Mr. Muhammad Jabir, and Ms. Vidushi. So these were the 3 speakers of this session. Advocate Irfan, engineer, is director from Center for Study of Society and Secularism. And his lecture, I found it to be extremely insightful and enlightening. He beautifully explained the concept of majoritarianism, populism, post-truth, and majority populism. So though I had known some of these concepts, but he explained these very, very beautifully by citing examples, both from India and across the globe. The major takeaways from his session was that majority populism is when the majority community is transformed into the political community. He also gave the concept of post-truth, which is an illusion that is created by the ruling party, and a particular community starts feeling that he's threatened and all the others are enemy. So he starts believing on certain ideas or certain notions which the ruling party throws on them. And so this post-truth is a major driving factor for majority populism. He also highlighted upon the repercussions of majority populism on the minority community, which includes lynching, genocide, mass killings, and more subtle ways discrimination at various levels. And towards the end, Dr. Irfan emphasized that multiculturalism, which is another concept which he explained, wherein all communities should be allowed to flourish, should be promoted instead of majority populism. And he also mentioned some strategies of peace building towards the end. After this, we had the paper presentation by Ayman Siddiqui and another associate of hers, Ms. Afreen Khan. and they spoke on community peace building challenges and opportunities. Their paper mainly focused on the atrocities faced by women across the globe, and they highlighted it by citing the examples of the Devdasis and the Uyghur Muslim women, what atrocities they are facing. And they also cited some case studies of two successful women who are fighting for the women's rights through their work. They included Sudha Murthy and Runa Banerjee. And towards the end, the paper also, speakers also talked about the COVID-19 pandemic and the vulnerabilities it has imposed on women. So this was all the what was there in this paper. And after this, we had the next presentation by Vidushi Srivastava. She is a research scholar in IGNOU, and her paper was on community organization as a strategy for peace building. And basically, this paper focused on various strategies used in community organization, which can be used for peace building. And she elaborated upon each of these strategies, which included awareness generation, need assessment, active participation, community mobilization, community capacity building, and so on and so forth. So this again was a very enlightening paper for us. And the last paper in this parallel session was by Muhammad Jabir and Gajendra V. They are from the Department of Development Management, Madras. And they basically introduced the concept of conflict and saying that the main reason of conflict in India is the huge diversity that we have in our country because of various ethnic and religious background people staying together. And the main focus of the paper was on the bottom-up approach for community transformation, which can lead to peace building. And in this regards, they focused on three frameworks. The first was the everyday peace building. The second was the local peace building, and the third was the emancipatory peace building. And each of these frameworks, they highlighted or they threw information or on these aspects through intensive review of literature from journals, various journals on peace. And towards the end, they also said that these three processes are extremely important for building peace in the community. Now coming to the second parallel session, unfortunately, I could not join both the sessions together. So, but still I could get some notes from my colleagues, and I went through the PPTs last night. So I hope I'm able to recap it. Okay, so the first, this parallel session was chaired by my colleague, Ms. Meghna Westpicker. And the main lead speaker of this session was Mubashir Hassan. And he's an adjunct research fellow, Hadri University of Western Sydney, Australia. And the other paper presenters of this session were Mariam Prasad, Vikrant Kumar Dasani, and Dr. Khushman Rajendran. Okay, so Mr. Mubashir's paper was titled as Community-Based Peace Building and Human Rights. And he began by talking about his explaining the difference between peace building and peacekeeping. And he said that peace building is a very important part of peacekeeping. And he elaborated this by citing two case studies, one from the UN peacekeeping operations, another from the violence extremism. Citing the UN peacekeeping operation, he highlighted upon the tools for community engagement. And towards the end, he emphasized upon countering violence extremism through community-based approaches. And he gave an example from Bangladesh to highlight this. And he also spoke about peacekeeping and human rights violation. Now, this was followed by three very interesting paper presentations. The first one was by Mariam Prasad on migration, mitigation, tranquility, Sahel region, Africa. So basically, this paper focused on the pertinent point that whether violence is justified to maintain tranquility. And this issue was discussed by citing the example from Burkina Faso region in Africa. She concluded that by highlighting the point that human rights can't be compromised even during conflict. And in the last part of her presentation, she focused on the justice and peace restoration model, which has been propounded by her. Now, the next session, next paper presentation was by Mr. Vikrant Kumar Desani and Professor M.N. Parmar on human rights violation and social work approach, a case of nomadic and denotified tribes. This paper mainly focused on the atrocities faced by the nomadic tribes, both across the globe as well as in India. And it highlighted upon the social work interventions needed to change the plight of the denotified tribes, which can include community-based approach, participatory approach, and social inclusion. And the third and the last paper in this session was again very interesting. It was by Kushman Rajendran, and it was on digital spaces for equity and community action, where they have highlighted a Wire World of Seniors program being practiced in Toronto, Canada, where a group of school students are teaching the seniors for digital literacy. And as a result of this program, the seniors are not only getting trained in computer skills, but they're also experiencing positive sense of well-being. So these were the sessions of the 2 days conference. It was very, very enlightening. And due to the paucity of time, I won't be able to share the deliberations, but each of these sessions were laced with extremely enriching discussions and deliberations, which has added a lot of meaning and rigor to this conference. I thank all the participants for their active participation, and I'm most thankful to all our esteemed and honorable paper presenters for making such a wonderful contribution in this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Saman. We now invite Dr. Harsh Manzar to deliver the valedictory address.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you. I did want to start by saying how privileged I feel to be here. For many years, I have been a great admirer of Nirmala Niketan and the kind of education it imparts, the the empathy intertwined with high degree of professionalism, um, the compassion, but also the ability to speak out against injustice. I This conference has been about communities building peace, and I'm sorry I was not able to attend the conference, but the summary that was presented very ably over the last 15 minutes did give me a sense of the deliberations that you've had, which have been extraordinarily rich. I just wanted to start off by saying that when we talk about peace, we should not talk just about peace, but we should talk about just peace. What do I mean to say? I mean to say that there are different kinds of peace. There is a certain kind of peace that prevails when vulnerable communities, when minorities, Dalits, women, even within our homes, accept that they are second-class citizens, they accept injustice, they accept violence, then a certain kind of peace is built. And that is for me, when I said we're not just talking about peace, we're talking about just peace. And for me, peace, what is central to true, authentic peace is justice, is equal citizenship, is the idea that regardless of your religious identity, your caste identity, your gender, your beliefs, political beliefs, uh, you will be in every way an equal citizen and get equal protection by the laws of the land. Um, India is passing through what I increasingly regard to be uh, its darkest moments as a republic. Uh, I would say this earlier with a caveat uh, that perhaps barring the 18 months of the emergency in the 1970s, when I was just a young college student, but I would argue, as I see India being transformed in the juggernaut that we are witnessing, that in some ways the crisis of democracy and peace and just peace, as I spoke of, uh, is even deeper than it was in the openly declared emergency of the 1970s. The emergency was an extremely authoritarian project. It was an authoritarian project to remain in power despite grave allegations of corruption and a people's movement, a very strong people's movement, and court judgments. Um, but what we are seeing today is once again uh, an extremely authoritarian leadership which is taking away our freedoms in multiple ways. And the recent last night I was moderating a discussion around the so-called love jihad uh, 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 ordinance, which is apparently going to become a model, where even the freedom to choose a partner by one adult to another, if they happen to be of different faiths, is being criminalized and gravely criminalized. Our freedoms and freedom of worship, the freedom of choice, the freedom to dissent uh, are being taken away from us. But why I say this is even a more terrifying time is that the emergency uh, was not a communal project. It was not a project to divide us on the basis of hate. Uh, and it wasn't also a neoliberal project to advance the interests of big capital. And so the taking away of our freedoms today with the project of hate and the project of crony capitalism, intolerant of all dissent, intensely majoritarian, intensely neoliberal, uh, is uh, has brought our republic to its most difficult moment. I have limited time, so I will talk about one facet of, of the darkness of our moment and its great threat to peace, to a just peace. Uh, there's never been a more frightening time to be a Muslim in India. Uh, it's, uh, it's of course also a very difficult time to be a working poor person or a farmer. Uh, it's a particularly difficult time to be a destitute person, a homeless person with whom also I work. It's a time when we see the erosion of various countervailing institutions, the the parliament, the cabinet, the parliament, the political parties of the opposition. Uh, I see them behave, with each further step in this juggernaut. I'm reminded of this picture of deer who are caught at night in the headlights. I mean, they just are frozen. They don't know what to do, and the clarity with which they need to fight each of these measures that are taking away our freedoms, the promises and at the soul of our constitution, and which have reduced our Muslim sisters and brothers to second-class citizens, we hear very muted, very confused, very equivocal, very occasional voices of dissent from some sections uh, of the political opposition. Uh, it's not even, we've even forgotten that there is a National Human Rights Commission, there's a National Commission for Minorities, uh, there's a Lokpal, there's a Chief Information Commissioner, all of these institutions, a National Commission for Women, National Commission for the Protection of Child Rights, and so on and so forth. And there is, and there has been action taken against me by the Supreme Court, and I will still reiterate my deep disappointment at the role of the judiciary in these times, the senior judiciary. There have been very brave judgments, and especially by high courts. But there's something that I think we must remember, and Germany, and the experience of Germany in the 1930s, 40s, should remain for us a permanent reminder that a democracy is not only about the will of the majority. If it is, then it will push us to majoritarianism and ultimately to fascism. A democracy is always equally about the protection of the rights as equal citizens of every minority community of religion, caste, race, sexuality, gender. And that role, the defense of the minority, and that role is very importantly played by the high judiciary. And we have seen this whether it was in Assam, the NRC, the detention centers, whether it was the Ram Temple, whether it was the questions, the habeas corpus petitions that were raised in Kashmir, the 370, the challenges to the CAA law and to the NRC and to the NPR, all of them have, either been put into cold storage, and the executive is free to do what it can, what it wishes, or the judiciary has clearly sided with majoritarian executive ideological positions. There's the erosion that we see also of the media in a significant silencing of dissenting progressive voices in academia and in civil society. Um, so the media, I recall, just let's go back to 2002, and that is a turning point in the journey of our republic. It was a time when I was in the IAS and I chose to leave and stand with the people who were suffering from the politics of hate. And it's a decision I have never regretted. When I look back at 2002, however bad things were, we had a National Human Rights Commission that was headed by Justice Verma, and the role that it played, was extraordinary. I personally helped the NHRC, and it tried to bring some accountability. It was a time when we got very powerful orders from the Supreme Court of India. It was a time when the media, and we're not just talking about a small section of the media. The Times of India, in fact, I wrote a piece called "Cry My Beloved Country" at the point that when I returned from the relief camps and I saw what kind of hate had happened, and it marked my decision to leave the IAS. And the Times of India contacted me and said we'd like to publish in a small edited version of this, and it was first published really in the Times of India. It was a different time. Uh, Many more voices in the academia and civil society uh, spoke out. We see, and I think that, as I said, I'm running out of time, so let me make a few more points. The erosion of India as a secular democracy for which the freedom struggle was fought and which was written into the constitution by Dr. Ambedkar and other heroes of our freedom struggle, uh, has not happened only over the last 6 years. There's been a steady erosion. There has been a continuous betrayal by over and over again by the parties which call themselves secular. The anti cow slaughter legislations, however much Nehruji opposed them, have substantially been passed by Congress governments. It's important to bear that in mind. And the role of ruling governments, often of the Congress, whether or the SP or the BSP, etc., during major riots has always been equivocal and majoritarian. Um, the story of the demolition of the Babri Masjid is again a reminder of how the larger political spectrum, in a sense, became complicit in that moment which changed the course of India's history. Uh, but this last year has been, in many ways, perhaps the darkest, even in this journey of the Republic. The first 5 years of Mr. Modi's regime, I think I saw, when talking about the, peace and the impact on our Muslim minorities, I saw two projects. One was to render the Indian Muslim politically irrelevant. And let me explain this. Political scientists have long held that a party which is openly hostile to India's Muslims cannot come to power, at least get a majority on its own, because Muslims form a significant part of the population of several constituencies. But the BJP uh, said that, and they resolved that we can overturn this by uniting everybody else across religion and across caste against this, what we see as who we construct as the common enemy within. And so we've seen large parts of the Northeast, a state like Nagaland is 90-95% Christian, etc. They've all bought in and stood with. We see, the church sadly has, the official church has often been equivocal. Stan Swami's arrest has been, a rare time when they spoke out. But to my brothers and sisters there, I keep saying, why did it take Father Stan Swami's uh, arrest and not Umar Khalid's for you to feel the same anguish and to speak out? Uh, but there was a brief spark of intense hope, and let us not forget it. Almost exactly a year ago, we saw a movement which went on for 100 days, uh, which was unprecedented in the journey of our republic. For the first time after partition, we saw Hindus and Muslims coming together in solidarity and with the largest non-violent uh, resistance that our country has seen. Uh, I had the privilege of being called to address a number of, almost every day I was traveling to a new part of the country, and lakhs of people would gather. And to see, in one hand, the picture of Mahatma Gandhi as a symbol of radical love with courage, and on the other, the picture of Dr. Ambedkar as a symbol of our constitution and also the idea of radical equality. And it's bound all of us together, students across class and caste, and tribal people, Dalit people. Of course, substantially Muslim women and youth led this movement. And as I said, I was privileged to be a witness to it uh, for 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 uh, uh, for all of these 100 days. And it was, once that happened, I felt a sense of hope which I was losing, because I said that this is really the answer to the politics of hate, saying that we will not raise our hands, we will not hate, we will never use violence, but we will stand together. एंड मैं कई बार कहता हूँ कि दो इंसानों के बीच में अगर सबसे बड़ा रिश्ता क्या है, आप सोचें, व्हाट इज द स्ट्रॉन्गेस्ट बॉन्ड बिटवीन टू ह्यूमन बीइंग्स, और मैं मानता हूँ वो है दर्द का रिश्ता, द रिलेशनशिप ऑफ पेन. एंड सो व्हेन पहलू खान इज beaten on his back, do I feel the pain on my back? When Junaid's mother loses her 14-year-old son to a heat attack on the trains, on a train, do tears well up in my eyes? Spontaneously after Junaid's the lynching, I wrote a piece which the Indian Express carried, which started with the words, "Junaid was my son. I did not know him when he was alive. Uh, and our worlds were very different. He was studying, I'm an agnostic, he was studying to be a religious leader, a religious teacher, a cleric. And the last days of his life, he had become a hafiz. Hafiz is when you've memorized the entire Quran. And for 20 days, he had recited the Quran from memory. And the people of the village had given him a small amount of money as a prize. And with 2,000 rupees, he had gone to Chandni Chowk to buy gifts for Eid for his family with his brothers. And he was lynched to death with great cruelty. I said that in the way that he was killed, I feel he is my son. But I wanted to also underline that he was also the son of all of those on that train compartment who, who lynched him to death or who watched while he died, while he was being lynched without intervening. He was also the son because they threw him out at the railway station finally. And for 45 minutes, his brother held him. He was still breathing in his lap, trying to find someone to help. I went to that station. I talked to all the people in shops, and all of them kept saying, "Humne kuch nahi dekha, humne kuch nahi dekha." It was 6 o'clock in the evening. I said, "He's also their son." So this idea of solidarity, of standing together, and I think the lockdown uh, has highlighted what kind of people we are. Arundhati Roy somewhere very beautifully said that COVID is a virus, but it is also an X-ray. It's an X-ray of society, and it has shown us what kind of society we have. So the Prime Minister announces the most stringent lockdown uh, in the world, in history, and in history. China, even at its peak, locked down just 5% of its population. We locked down 100% with the smallest relief package. And when the Prime Minister was speaking to all of us on television announcing this, he was saying, stay at home, work from home, keep social distance, wash your hands regularly. I heard him with, with disbelief. I said, has he forgotten that the large part of Indians do not, either don't have a home in which they can live. Firstly, they don't have work that will allow them to stay at home and still be paid. They work and eat every day. They either don't have a home or their home is so small that there's no possibility of social distance. If 10 people live in a slum shanty and 150 people share one common toilet, what is the question of social distance? They don't have running water. In fact, sometimes a third of their earnings is to buy a pot of water. You're asking them to wash their hands regularly. He was clearly, and then he asked us to come out into our balconies and cheer. That means we had a house and we have a balcony. What about those who don't? Uh, I think that, when Ananthi said that this was an X-ray, it was an X-ray which showed us that we live in a society where some lives matter, some lives have to be protected, and some lives are completely dispensable. And we don't care what happens to them. And then there was, of course, the cynical communalization of the pandemic, the use of the lockdown. Also, to crush and criminalize dissent, destroy the movement of solidarity that had been built up, the abject failure of the political opposition, the judiciary, the NHRC, the NCM, the media, and most of civil society. This is a moment very similar to what the German people experienced in the 1930s. That was also an elected government. That was also a government which enjoyed majority support. And very interestingly, with the comparison with the Love Jihad ordinance, it was really a turning point. Many historians say is a law which made marriages between people of different faiths illegal, and they believe that that was the spark which finally drew into the conflagration, which was the Holocaust. We are seeing that spark lit over and over again, and we remain silent. There's no moment in the history of our republic when democracy stands as threatened as it does today. There's no moment in the history of our republic when fraternity stands as threatened as it does today. Martin Luther King somewhere said, in the end, we will not remember the words of our enemies, we will remember the silences of our friends. And I'm here with only one message. If we remain silent, look within. What is it that keeps us silent when our brothers and sisters around us are suffering? The crushing of their freedoms, the crushing of their right to be equal citizens of this country. Why are we not speaking up? There can be three reasons. The first of them is, I don't care. I don't belong to this community. It's not going to happen to me. The second is, I'm frightened to speak out. I don't have the courage. But a third can be, I'm not speaking up because actually in my heart, I share those same sentiments of hate. And I'd like to, just remind you that the word love jihad was not created by the RSS. The word love jihad was first developed by the Bishops' Council in Kerala to talk about the same idea of handsome Muslim boys, attracting Christian girls who seem to have nothing in their heads and would just uh, 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 get tangled. That idea was picked up, and that is a reminder of how important solidarity is, of building that deepest bond between human beings in this country that we live in the world, building that dard ka rishta. Otherwise, if we remain silent, at least we owe it to ourselves to tell us, is it fear? Is it the fact that I don't care? Or is it that I actually share those sentiments of hatred? And what we need most of all, I don't expect everyone to come onto the streets, but I expect you at least to care. I think kindness is perhaps the biggest resistance to the politics of hate. Are we able to kindle and sustain the kindness in our own hearts and souls and in the souls of the young people we teach? That is the last thought that I'd like to leave to you with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Over to Mr. Elvis Thomas.
Good afternoon, everybody. We have reached the end of the conference. This has been a momentous occasion for the College of Social Work to have successfully hosted an international conference outline is indeed an achievement, as it is for the first time that we have done so. And now it is my task to thank everybody people who spoke, people who did not speak, people who worked behind the scenes, because we believe that a vote of thanks is not just words, but it comes from our heart and goes to you all who helped us make this a successful occasion. This was possible because of the strong support of the management of the Institute, especially Dr. Maggie, and also the encouragement and motivation of the principal, Dr. Midwin Dias. We are very grateful to them. On behalf of the college, I appreciate the involvement of the internal quality assurance cell of the college in thinking of this event and urging the college to go ahead with it. We are extremely grateful to the advisory committee, which included Mrs. Farida Lambe, Dr. Nilima Mehta, Dr. Kenji, and Professor Michael for their guidance, insights, and encouragement. A special thanks to Dr. Kenji, who helped us identify and contact some of the speakers. And of course, his expertise in this field of peace education was a great help in our deliberations. So thank you, sir. I also thank Dr. Christoph Jaffelon, Dr. Harsh Mandar, Professor Ranu Jain, Dr. Fatima Sajad, Advocate Irfan Engineer, and Dr. Mubashir Hassan. Thank you so much for taking time out for us. Thank you so much for talking from your heart and sharing with us your experiences. Their contributions through their papers helped us all to understand the concepts of peace and conflict, as well as the various dynamics present in dealing with them. A special thanks to Dr. Mandar for being here with us at the end of the conference. Sir, you have spoken from your heart. You have felt the pain of people, and we are with you in that. Thank you so much. I remember meeting Dr. Mandar in 1985 as a student and being so impressed with the work that he was doing in Telonia at that time. Thank you, sir, once more. I appreciate the contributions of those who presented papers for helping us understanding the wide array of problems existing in the world and how they are tackled. It was very educative to listen to them. Next, I wish to thank all my faculty colleagues who willingly took on responsibilities and worked towards fulfilling them. This, I believe, was one of the reasons that everything went off so smoothly. Thank you so much. This teamwork was instrumental in a successful conference. Thank you to the technical team of Dr. Ronald, Mr. Albin, Mr. Darshan, Mr. Praveen, Mr. Sandesh, Mr. Mukund. Their tireless efforts, and I'm saying tireless because I know how hard they worked and how they struggled but came out on top. So their tireless efforts in mastering the intricacies of technology and bringing that together more than 1,000 people for this conference is commendable. Thank you so much. This ensured a seamless progression of the conference. Mr. Cletus, Mr. Virochan, Mr. Sandesh, Mr. Alvin, all of them ensured publicity in newspapers and other places. Ms. Irene and Nicole took great pains to prepare the posters and other visuals, which helped us to reach out to people through WhatsApp messages, through emails, and help them understand what the conference was about. Thanks also to Mr. Mukund and Mr. Praveen for preparing the certificates for this conference. We appreciate the efforts of the organizing committee, who along with myself consisted of Dr. Anita, Dr. Renu, and Dr. Smita. Dr. Anita was a constant motivator and was constantly in touch with us to look into every aspect of the conference. Dr. Renu and Dr. Smita were a tremendous support and saw to the minute details of planning. Finally, I thank all the participants, including our students, who took time out to attend this conference and be a part of this event. Your participation has given us tremendous confidence. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you all. We will end this conference with the national anthem. Please stand for that. We will take a couple of seconds.
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता। पंजाब सिंधु गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल गंगा। विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्छल जलधि तरंगा। तब शुभ नामे जागे तब शुभ आशीष मांगे। गाहे तब जय गाथा जन गण मंगल दायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता। जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे। जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत।
Thank you, friends. So we are winding this conference. Have a good day.